Welcome back to Make Your Move. Today's guest, Bart Bartelloni. Bart's his call sign. His real name is James, but he goes by Bart. Great guy who has a lot to share. Sometimes I have to ask the lesson about what's your best life lesson. Bart just oozed out so many lessons through this interview that I know you'll enjoy. He's a former Tomcat pilot, but he found entrepreneurship even more stressful than landing on a carrier at night. That's saying a lot. He's been an entrepreneur multiple times over, has experienced several of the financial upsides in exchange for that risk, and he's moved across a couple of different industries and talks about the pros and cons of doing so. We'll see throughout the interview that he's got a great balance on life and work, not work life. And we'll talk a little bit about stand-up paddleboarding and what that means and how to find the stoke. Here you go, Bart Bartelloni.
Thanks, Gene. Thanks for having me. Really looking forward to talking to you.
Bart, you should be an early chapter in the book, but because Bart is not your real name, but
Yeah.
it is your real name. The way Scott laid it out, you fall a little deeper into the book.
I do. I'm not sure how I do, but I fall a little bit later. But save the best for last, I guess. No, I'm kidding. But
Well, he lays it out by first name, and I just got my copy of the book. We're in the third week of May here. You are chapter 17, page 63.
okay,
It's a
all
it's a
right.
must read.
Oh, people will be captivated. I know they will.
Well, we're in the season where we're amplifying the book, The Military Effect, written by Scott Manthorne. How did you get to know Scott?
Yeah, absolutely. So actually, a friend of mine who I met through a retreat I was at, Suzanne Lesko, was the one who introduced us. And so I was introduced to Scott through a mutual friend through networking, right? That's how it works. And since then, boy, I've probably been on the phone with Scott once a week. There's so many different points of intersection. It's amazing with Scott. So unbelievable man, huge patriot, and I've really, really enjoyed getting to know him, and our ideas about life and people and everything are really aligned. And so it's been a pleasure working with him to put this book together for all of our veterans and military people and everybody out there. So I'm really looking forward to the launch.
Yeah, I think Scott sees an even bigger audience now that it's developed, and he tells me he didn't see it so clearly at the beginning, but now he sees that the audience is really the community outside of the military, so that they might have a different appreciation of what is involved in
Yeah,
shifting
yeah.
shifting from
And
active duty.
and it's interesting too that as soon as you said that, I thought to myself, we are a melting pot, right? The military is truly a melting pot of all of the amazing people that are part of this republic, right? And so we all understand what we went through and how proud we were of our service in the Navy, Army, Coast Guard, whatever, Marines. I'll say Air Force, but we all go back to our community, and then the different communities, we're a minority in that community from the perspective of our military service. So getting that word out to our different communities that we come from and how we all coexist and make the mission happen, even though our backgrounds are completely different, right? From all stratas of males, females, educational, opportunities. It's quite a story. So hopefully that the audience will grow and see the value of what a military veteran can bring them, whether it's business, society, coaching, the local soccer team, whatever it's going to be. Veterans have a lot to offer.
They have perspective that's been forced upon them, right?
Yeah, exactly. A little bit of that for sure, but we're used to it, right?
Well, you mentioned Suzanne Lesko at the top there.
Yeah,
Is
yeah.
so were you one layer removed from Scott, or was there a second connection there?
No, that was it. That was the connection. One layer through Suzanne, and Suzanne and I actually work together now on the board of directors of a nonprofit, Behind Thin Lines. So we're really passionate about making sure that the veterans have a voice wherever they are and wherever they can be. So yeah,
Tell us
Suzanne
tell
was the
us
one who introduced me. It was
tell
pretty
us
cool.
about Behind Thin Lines.
Yeah, sure. So Behind Thin Lines is a nonprofit. We work in the entheogenic space, and we really are advocating.
Say that real
I'm sorry, a
slowly,
big
real
word.
slowly.
Entheogenic is what's called plant-based medicines.
Okay.
So Behind Thin Lines, we are advocating on the Hill for plant-based medicines. We're educating. So, we're educating people about the effects and trying to actually get a little bit of the stigma, if you will, away from that. And then we're also doing a lot of research. So we have our own lab and we're providing research services around these. So that's a really, I really love being a part of it. And so any first responder or military veteran out there can look us up and contact us, and we can talk to them if they're interested in going down this route or exploring it. So I'm on the board of directors for that, and I just the veterans are just an incredible group of people, right? They We resonate with them just because we've done it, but ultimately there's a lot of different modalities to support people, right? Beyond traditional medicine, which works great, but let's give everyone the opportunity to choose what they think is right for themselves. So I really love that. So yeah, Zena, I know her as Zena, Suzanne Lesko. She got me involved and introduced me to Scott. Wonderful woman.
So this is extracurricular work. Is this related to your
Yeah,
business?
no, this is volunteer.
Yeah. So tell us what you do for business.
Absolutely. So, once it's interesting. Once I got out of the Navy, I've been in business development my entire career, and I look back now, and it was just a natural fit. I kind of fell into it, right? I really didn't know what different let's say operations or different roles there were in business, and so I just naturally gravitated. One, I love people. My first business development job, I flew Tomcats in the Navy. I was a backseater, and he's like, "You know nothing about this industry, right? You know nothing about business." I'm like, "Yes, yes." And he said, "So why in the world should I give you this job?" And I'm like, "Well, actually, I don't know, right? But I've got over 1,000 hours teaching or telling the most cockiest, fragile, emotionally just immature people in the world called pilots to go left when they want to go right." He's like, "You're hired." I'm like, "Okay, let's do this." So that launched the business development career. It's not necessarily sales, if you will. I think there's a difference, but business development allows me to have my hands in all kinds of things. So I touch marketing, I touch M&A, I touch competitive landscape, right? What's going on in the marketplace? Obviously, I do sales, right? But from a business development perspective, I just love building relationships. And the more you're able to build those relationships and make that personal connection, then you can really get to the crux of what their business issue might be. And a business developer is looking for solutions, right? And then if we don't have the solutions, I go back to the board or my president, CEO, and I say, "Hey, we need to build something, right? The market's pivoting in this way." So I've just found being a business developer, I've been able to be out there on the cutting edge, if you will, of where business is going and the effects of technology, and really trying to hone in a targeting strategy for a company to go and basically sell their product in the marketplace. So I've been in business development my entire career. I was
So
asked to go into operations. I turned that down. I'm like, "You don't want me doing that." So that's what I'm doing now. Yeah.
tell us, I'm sorry to jump on you. Tell us
No, please.
where within industry you're doing business development, and then sort of walk it back to how did you get to this place?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Boy, Gene, we might need 5 hours, but I'll try to be quick. It's an interesting thing when you do the transition, right? The easy thing to do is, and I'm not saying it's wrong, I'm saying the easiest thing to do, right, is to go and work in the DoD and be a contractor. And many people did that and have been extremely successful. The industry, and it kind of makes sense. Me, I wanted to do something completely different. So I started out in a company called the Yankee Group, and that was internet, e-business, and telecommunications. A little bit of internet security, but basically I was selling research. Um, and I was clueless, but it was business development, right? And so for me, I jumped industries, and that's hard to do, but it's enjoyable. So I did business development in research, right? Technical research, companies that are like on the NASDAQ, that are in telecommunications, internet, e-business, that type of stuff. And then I jumped ship and helped start a virtual reality software company. Knew nothing about software, zero. I could spell it. That's about all we knew. And that was 20 years ago, Gene, right? So I was actually at the CES show, boy, 2 or 3 years ago, walking around the virtual reality booths. They were
Consumer
doing nothing
Electronics Show.
different than us, right? But we were just 20 years too early. So from there, we exited that business somehow by the grace of God. And I went into consulting, and that was DoD and IC. So I went all the way back to where I'd come from. And then an individual who's my president and CEO right now, Mark, this is our third company together. He was working with me at the consulting company. He got into healthcare. And so he called me about 9 to 12 months later. He's like, "Hey, you want to come down and get into healthcare?" And I said, "I would love to, but you realize I know nothing about it." And he's like, "Well, you can figure it out." I got to tell you, Gene, I underestimated that. Healthcare is a different beast. It was very humbling. But I ended up in healthcare doing patient support programs, which was a lot of fun to see how the healthcare system works and to see how there's so many different benefits for the consumer of health that they don't know about that are pretty amazing. So all these different patient support programs. And so we exited that business once, which was great. And then I took some time off. So I took 2 years off in my mid 50s. I highly recommend it, and I don't recommend it.
For the uninitiated, Bart,
Yes.
when you say you exited a business,
Yes. Good question.
you don't
Yeah.
have to put numbers on it, but is that, are we talking about selling a business and
Correct.
having
Yeah.
an equity
Correct.
event where,
That's
okay.
correct. That's correct. And, I think, especially in the military, understanding that equity events are very powerful for your ability to accumulate wealth, understand that and go for opportunities that you might be able to get a slice of the pie because that's the way to do it. So I saw the light. So that was really fun and it's very exciting, right? And so I did some consulting, and then I got called again, and now I'm in biotech. So I'm working in the biotechnology field as a business developer, mostly around what's called health economics outcomes research and real world evidence. So when a company brings a medical device or any type of therapeutic drug to the FDA, they have to show that it can work, right? They have to prove that this drug says it can do what it can. And what are the economic impacts on that? So there's a whole industry running economic models, doing all kinds of literature reviews, really digging into the depths of when you bring something to the market, whether it's a medical device or any type of like therapeutic for specialty drug or rare disease, what's the economic impact? And so that's what our company does. And it's a company called HEOR, Complete HEOR Solutions. And so we're private equity backed, and we're building a platform called Farm Alliance, which we've bought 3 companies in 6 months. So our hair is on fire. That's part of the reason I was so delayed, and I've just been so busy. And looks like I'm going to India in a month. They had a lot of Indian people, so
Let me
it's going to be great.
let me just try to pick this apart a little bit, and
Yes,
I don't want to spend too much time on it, but I want to
please,
draw the distinction for the audience.
please.
You mentioned that some people choose what looks like an easier path by going
Right.
into the defense world, and you've clearly gone into multiple different industries. Did you find that your network is what allowed you to do that, or some people are using network connections within defense to stay in defense? And then you're also talking about various levels of risk
Yes.
with your potential future income.
Hmm.
How did you work through those couple of factors?
Extremely, extremely difficult because it has been risky, to be honest with you, for sure.
But
Um,
I'm just going to point out for those who are listening, you want to look at the podcast version of this because there's a great screen behind Bart, and offline we were talking about the waves. So I want you to weave into
yeah,
the upside of risk as well here.
yeah, for sure. So it's interesting when I break it down into 3 different types of people leave the military, right? You've got your five and dives who are amazing people. He and she did an amazing job, right? They served their country, but they never really had any idea of making it a career. They get out, they get their MBA, they go to McKinsey, blah, 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 right? Then you have the, let's say, 9 to 12 year point. They're more entrepreneurial minded. They like to push the limits, right? And they're at a big decision point of whether they're going to drink the Kool-Aid and go air quote management, right? And continue the career, or they just are, more entrepreneurially minded in the big bureaucracy of the government, of the DoD, which it is. It's okay to say it, right? Um, Kind of forces them to get out and do other things, right? Um, I would love if the military would somehow produce an entrepreneurial track, right? And you're never going to be more than a commander, let's say, or a chief, if you're in the enlisted world, but you really don't care, right? Because you like to push the limits and just make it happen. I wish they had an entrepreneurial track in the military, but so be it. And then your third person is, they are a career man or woman, and they spend their 20 years in. For those listening, you get to that 10 or 12-year point. I don't care if you're enlisted or officer, it's really 25 because it's worth staying this extra 5 years, right? So you're not looking at 10 years, you're looking at 15. That's kind of the dirty little secret. But other people get out at 20, so that's fine. So I was in that group. I spent 11 years in the cockpit straight, right? So when I got out, I just naturally gravitated towards risky adventures. That's just in my personality. And I'll be honest with you, a lot of them didn't work out. And so that was very hard, right? If it doesn't work out in the military, you're probably going to run into a mountain, and then you really don't need to think about it anymore, right? If you're out of the military and you're trying to start a business, right? You're starting to create something from scratch that you think that's probably the wrong thing, right? Don't think it hurts the team that you think is going to address an inefficiency in the marketplace you're attacking. It's not easy. It's hard. It takes a significant amount of capital, and it takes a significant amount of risk. So learning how to balance that risk, and also learning how to be comfortable in your skin, that you only fail when you quit. So, but you can be failing, so you should quit. You know what I mean? So you just, it's all on you, right? And to be honest with you, looking back on it now, I think I was under more pressure and had more stress as an entrepreneur than I ever did on, like, let's say, a night carrier landing, right? Your people's mortgages are on the line, your name's on the line, right? And it's wonderful to be able to use your creativity to try to create something, but it can also be extremely depressing when that vision, it just doesn't work out. Timing, our virtual reality software company, we were 20 years too early. We didn't realize it till we were about 3 years into it, right? So there's a significant amount of risk, and you have to be comfortable in that environment. And so to weave that in, my business, I was working in the healthcare, which I talked about earlier. We didn't have any presence in California. I had the amazing opportunity. I was blessed to be able to fly out of Miramar for 5 years. And so when, the opportunity to come out here came, my president and CEO was like, "Where are you going to go?" And I said, "How about San Diego?" And he said, "Go for it." So I called up the wife, and she said, "San Diego." So that's how we ended up in San Diego, right? And it's one of the biotech capitals of our country, if not the world. So it's a great place to be. But I've always loved the water. And so my wife was, "Hey, you got to do something when we get out here." So I just said, "I'm going to teach myself how to stand up paddleboard surf." I'd never been on a stand up paddleboard, and I had never surfed. And when you start talking about risk, it's a pretty risky adventure, believe it or not. And it took me a year to catch my first wave. And so I was out there just in any condition. I didn't know any better, right? I really didn't. And I just got the crap beaten out of me over and over and over again. But I put myself in a risky situation that I wanted to conquer, right? And so fear is false expectations appearing real, right? And the ocean and surfing has taught me that with preparation, with skill and a little bit of luck, right? You can manage your fear. You don't have to let it conquer you, right? And so that's when I'm an entrepreneurial. After we exited our business, again, my beautiful wife, we're high school sweethearts. We grew up in Fairfax together. She said, "Go do something for yourself." And so I went to a stand-up paddleboard surf camp in Punta Mita, Mexico. Had the time of my life. No, by the way, I got a little bit better at surfing. And I called up a friend of mine, Wes Spence, and then another friend of mine, Richard Whittington, and both veterans. One's a SEAL, one's a Ranger Army. I said, we're going to start a nonprofit teaching vets how to stand up paddleboard surf. And they were like, okay. And I said, okay, now what do we do? So I literally bought the book, How to Start a Nonprofit for Dummies, and just kind of went like that and read it on a business trip. And I got off the plane. I texted him. I go, I think I need, know what we need to do. And we got approved, and we've had a nonprofit taking veterans down to Mexico twice a year to a week-long surf retreat to bathe them in water. And quite frankly, excuse me, I fill them with stoke. And if you are a surfer or you've been on the water once, whether it's a boogie board, body surfing, canoeing, right? The water does something to us, right? And so for me, my surfing is part of my life. It has radically changed my life. And boy, the men and women we have down to our retreats, they go through the same thing. And it's stoke, right? The only thing that gives me the adrenaline rush that I got from flying off carriers for 11 or 12 years is that initial drop in on a wave. And there's nothing like it. And you can only be present in those waves. And so fast forward to now, we've put about 65, 70 vets through our retreats, and it's a blast. So, but don't get paid for it, which again might not be the smartest thing in the world. So, in working in the business development field in biotech, but in my free time, which I, excuse me, don't have much of, I'm very involved in these veterans causes.
You hit on the word presence, and
Yes.
the word gets used a lot, but describe it in the moment there with surfing, because I think there's a lesson there for everybody.
Gene, that's a great question. There's a lot going on, right? You might not realize it when you're out on the water, especially in a stand-up paddleboard surfing, right? Your regular prone surfers, they're sitting in the lineup, they know where the waves are going to break, and the sup you're paddling around. So you're going through tremendous mental calculations of where I could be, where you're at, right? And so it's actually a pretty mental exercise too. It's very meditative, right? But when you drop in onto a wave, you literally forget everything, right? And I have no problem because it's had such an amazing effect on me, and I love it so much. In fact, I was texting you right before I jumped on with you. There's this amazing swell happening right now, and everyone's like, "Let's go!" And we're all in our mid-50s. I tell them,
We're gonna get you off to it as well.
well, no, that's okay. No, this is really important because I want people to see the passion for it,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
But I tell my wife, I go, I'm going to ride my big wheel. Remember the big wheels when we were going up? That's my big wheel. I'm in my mid-50s. I got a big wheel. I never thought that would happen. So you're literally, if you think about it, right? Go all the way back in time to the Big Bang. I think we're writing echoes of this Big Bang through the medium of water and a surfboard. And so when you get on that wave, you're basically given a tapestry to create, right? The creator, the architect, God has given you this amazing moment where you forget about the past. You're thinking about the future, but the only future you're thinking about is how can I maximize my joy being on this primordial echo of the Big Bang. You're writing energy, right, through the medium of a surfboard and water. And there's something that just captures you and changes you if you do it enough and you keep doing it enough, right? You keep progressing. And it's called stoke. And it's funny. Surfers, but they talk about it. But when you show up at that retreat that first night, what people don't realize is we're just giving them a little pin drop of stoke, just going around the table as people introduce themselves. And we're just filling them with joy. We're just filling them with fun. And we're making them understand. And it's every surfer will tell you this. The best surfer is the one having the most fun. That's it. So you could be all over the place, falling all over the water. Doesn't matter. If you're smiling and having fun, you're having a great day on the water. And that water bounces around at 10 hertz. So does a fire. So that 10 hertz bouncing around, there's a book called The Blue Mind. It affects your brain chemistry. It affects your neural network. The salinity of the water affects you. When the brain processes that it's looking at blue, like your background in your shirt, right? It affects you, right? And so there's nothing but goodness by being on the ocean water. Occasional sharks and orcas are another, but other than that, you can deal with it. Does that answer your question? I mean, it's powerful. It really
Yeah.
is.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I said, I think the word gets used a lot, but there's a specific interpretation of it as you're describing here.
It's real,
Yeah.
and it's something that we need to capture every day in our life, whatever that stoke is for you. For me, it's being on the water and surfing, right? For others, it could be gardening, right? And that's the other thing too, as you transition out of the military. There's an article I read, gosh, maybe 5 years ago. It's actually by the founder of LinkedIn, and it was called "Find Your Ball." And I was like, okay, this one looks interesting. And it was all about dogs and their tennis balls, right? That dog sees that tennis ball, its life has changed, right? It's all it wants to do. I have a dog called Hurley, such a great dog. Every night he knows it's time to go throw the ball, right? And so why can't we find our ball, right? And that's the charge. And I think that's what happens to a lot of military veterans is your ball in the military is service to our great republic and to the men and women who are next to you. There's nothing like it. It's an honorable, unbelievable calling, and it was my pleasure to be able to fly in these amazing machines. And I got to go to Top Gun, and I got to see the world, and just got exposed to so many amazing things. It was incredible. So most of the people have their ball, when they're in the military, and when they exit, they either drop the ball, put the ball away. They don't realize that all they have to do is change the color of it, right? So go coach your kid's soccer team, go get involved in local politics, go pick up a new skill. I picked up surfing at 49 years old. I got to tell you, Gene, it was horrible. My wife and my son, I have four kids too, three daughters and a son. I didn't have the four daughters like you did. God bless you. We can talk offline about maybe that's our next podcast, how to raise daughters in
I
the
attribute
2000s.
it to the Aegis weapon system having something to do with it.
That's right. I was a Tomcat guy, the Og 9. So, but you know, we all deserve to find our ball, right? And what brings you joy? And if you can combine joy with making a living, you found nirvana. There's nothing better. So it's worth the search. And for me, I just am a radical innovator. I don't like to change things. It's in my chemistry just to try to make things more efficient. That's what I like to do in business. And that's probably why I've jumped around different industries, right? I never got stale. And then I'm balanced. It's not work-life balance. It's life-work balance for me. And you can get lost and consumed in that job. So that water beckons me. I'm out there. And my boss, my CEO, he knows it. And sometimes I have calls with him 5:30 in the morning because I'm going surfing. So yeah, I'll be out in an hour, right? And so I do my best thinking out there. There's no, my kids got me one of the watches, one of the Apple watches to kind of, the cardio and but
Yeah,
I was connected and I felt horrible. I was just like, hey kids, I got to turn this in. I do not want to have any connection out there. The only connection is me and the ocean, and it's pretty powerful.
fantastic. Bart, thanks for joining us today.
Oh, I really appreciate it, Gene. I appreciate what you're doing. Hopefully, the book will blow everybody away. And thanks.